Well, first of all, we have never been deemed suspects.
Yeah, but the public regards you.
We've been said to be under the umbrella of suspicion, whatever that means.
But the police say you never told them about it.
Oh, that's false. Oh. I told Linda Arndt that I found the window open and I found a suitcase under the window. They have photos of this in their crime scene photos. We would challenge the police to release that tape.
Make it all public.
Let's make it public. We'd like to hear that tape. We've never heard it. And that became their theory. And they spent 3 years investigating us to try to prove that theory. That conclusion was reached before any of the evidence was even looked at.
I'm Marcus Wren, creator of the Tell Index, a 50-signal system for analyzing statements and behavior in criminal cases. Today's video breaks down the full first night of John and Patsy Ramsey's first live television interview on CNN's Larry King Live. Time to the release of their book, The Death of Innocence, roughly 3 years after their daughter's murder. 6-year-old JonBenet Ramsey was found dead in her family's Boulder, Colorado home on December 26, 1996. The family was cleared by DNA evidence in 2008, and the case remains unsolved. Subscribe if you want more analysis like this.
Simple.
Before we get to the story, to be a suspect and live with the death of a child as a suspect as well, how do you get through that?
Well, first of all, we have never been deemed suspects.
Yeah, but the public regards you.
We've been said to be under the umbrella of suspicion, whatever that means.
These people have no homicide experience. Their leadership had no experience in this. They concluded very quickly that it must have been the parents because the parents always do it. And that became their theory. And they spent 3 years investigating us to try to prove that theory. That conclusion was reached before any of the evidence was even looked at.
Asked what it's like living as a suspect, John Ramsey's first response is flat. We have never been deemed suspects. This is code A4, Story Credibility Check, specifically the contradictions criterion within its 4-part framework, checking a claim against outside sources and against the speaker's own later statements within the same interview. The claim doesn't survive contact with the public record. Nearly 3 years before this interview, on April 18, 1997, Boulder County District Attorney Alex Hunter stated publicly that John and Patsy Ramsey were under an umbrella of suspicion, a phrase official enough that the Ramseys' own attorney, L. Lynn Wood, later used it back in his correspondence with Boulder Police Chief Mark Beckner, asking whether the family would ever be officially and publicly cleared of it. John doesn't only get contradicted by an outside source here. 30 minutes later in this same interview, he contradicts himself. Describing Boulder police as having no homicide experience, he states flatly that they spent 3 years investigating us to try to prove that theory. 3 years of a department's investigative effort aimed specifically at proving someone's guilt is not a neutral, suspect-free status under any definition used in law enforcement. It is functionally what being a suspect means. The word suspect is one John Ramsey never applies to himself in this interview, but the fact pattern he describes elsewhere in the same 40 minutes matches it exactly.
You had said recently in an interview that you were willing to take a lie detector test, and apparently the Boulder police are now saying, let's set it up. Will you do it?
We were asked, had we been asked to take a lie detector test? We said no. We were asked, would we? We said certainly we would. We would expect it to be fair, and we would expect the results to be public.
And then you would take, well, by fair, what's the determination of that, Patsy?
Well, I think it has to be someone of
national repute, FBI man,
independent, a professional polygrapher.
We've been told that this is a dangerous thing to take a lie detector test because they're subjective science. They're not allowed in court as evidence.
Agree.
In Colorado, even if both sides agree, they're not allowed in court.
In the right hands, though.
But in the right, we have nothing to hide, and if they work, and if it will advance the cause of finding the killer of our daughter, we'll do it.
Asked directly if they'll take a polygraph, John and Patsy don't say no. They agree in principle, but immediately attach conditions. The examiner needs national reputation, has to be fully independent, and the results have to be made public. This is Code B8A, refusal to cooperate with the investigation, citing reasonable-sounding conditions to avoid directly complying with a request, when someone with nothing to hide typically has a strong motivation to simply cooperate. This isn't a hypothetical pattern. It's exactly what played out in the following weeks. Barely a month after this interview aired, Boulder Police Chief Mark Beckner agreed to the Ramseys' terms and proposed the FBI conduct the test as the independent examiner. On April 25, 2000, the Ramseys' attorney publicly declined, arguing the FBI, already involved in the case, didn't qualify as independent by their own definition, telling the Washington Post the FBI's exam was designed to intimidate and interrogate. The condition that sounded entirely reasonable on live television became, in practice, a standard that ruled out virtually every examiner Boulder authorities would actually accept. It took until August 2000, after John and Patsy hired their own polygrapher, Ed Gelb, a Los Angeles examiner and past president of the American Polygraph Association, for any results to become public at all, and Boulder police have never accepted those privately arranged results as satisfying their investigation. Setting public conditions that end up ruling out the other side's own examiner is a textbook version of the pattern this code is built to flag, appearing cooperative in words while the actual behavior narrows the path to compliance down to nothing.
In the book, you write about the suitcase in the open basement window, but the police say you never told them about it.
Oh, that's false. I told Linda Arndt that I found the window open and I found a suitcase under the window. They have photos of this in their crime scene photos.
When Larry King raises the police's own account that John never reported the open basement window to them, John doesn't hedge. He calls it false outright. I told Linda Arndt that I found the window open. This is code A4 again, this time checking the claim not against a hostile outside source, but against John's own sworn testimony given in a separate legal proceeding. In his own 2000 deposition for the Wolf versus Ramsey defamation lawsuit, taken the same year as this interview, John Ramsey was asked directly, under oath, whether he told anyone what he'd found in the basement that morning. His answer on the record, "I don't recall specifically if I did or not. I have a vague recollection of telling Linda Arndt that I found an open window with broken glass." "I have a vague recollection, and that's false," I told Linda Arndt, described two very different levels of certainty about the exact same fact. One stated on live television with a book to sell, the other stated under oath with perjury on the line. There's a second layer worth noting. The case record shows this detail. The open window, the suitcase positioned beneath it, didn't formally enter John's account until April 30th, 1997. During his first police interview, 4 months after the murder. Investigator James Kolar's book on the case flags this exact gap. If John had genuinely discovered an open window that morning while looking for signs of an intruder, the natural reflex would have been to report it immediately to the one detective already in the house, not to close and latch it himself, and only mention it 4 months later.
Police also say digital enhancement indicates that Burke was awake and asking questions when you called 911.
Well, some police claim they think they hear that. We would challenge the police to release that tape.
Make it all public.
Let's make it public. We'd like to hear that tape. We've never heard it. That is not our recollection of what happened that morning.
Asked about a specific piece of technical evidence, a digitally enhanced version of the 911 call some investigators say captures Burke's voice, John doesn't just deny it. He challenges police to release the tape publicly, framing it as something the family has never heard. This is Code C2, timeline mismatch with digital data, cross-referencing a claim about who was present and awake against an objective recording. The strongest evidence category in the whole framework, because it doesn't depend on memory. This dispute has genuinely run both ways over the years, and it's worth laying out fairly rather than picking a side. Former lead investigator Steve Thomas, in his own book on the case, wrote that the enhanced tape captures a muffled exchange, Burke asking why they're calling 911, and Patsy explaining they need police to come, with her tone shifting abruptly the moment the dispatcher picks up. But the claim doesn't stand unchallenged. According to today's 2003 reporting, Both the FBI and the U.S. Secret Service independently examined the same recordings and were unable to identify a clear third voice. And 911 dispatcher Kimberly Archuleta, in a 2016 interview with NBC's Dateline, said she believed she'd heard 3 voices in the background right after Patsy thought the call had ended. But even Archuleta couldn't say for certain what was said or confirm the third voice was specifically Burke's. What's notable about John's answer in this 1999 interview isn't that he's necessarily wrong. The fully enhanced tape has still never been made public, so no one outside law enforcement can independently verify either claim. It's that we would challenge the police to release that tape invites exactly the kind of outside verification that, more than 2 decades later, still hasn't happened.
Her hands were tied. She had tape over her mouth. I removed the tape immediately. I could feel that her skin was cool, and I feared the worst, but I still held out hope that she would be okay.
And with the police officer in the house at that time, why didn't you pick the child up, right?
Yes.
Why didn't you call a police officer to come right over and
This is my
take care of
daughter.
her? I mean,
This is my child. I loved her.
Instinctive reaction.
Where were you, Patsy?
I was upstairs with
You
friends.
told Patsy?
I don't remember the sequence.
When Larry King asks the obvious follow-up, with a police officer right there in the house, why not call her over before moving the body? John's answer doesn't really engage with the question. It shifts straight to, it was a child. I loved her. I didn't think. This is Code D5, attacking investigators/media, applied here to a quieter version of the same pattern. Rather than directly attacking Detective Arndt, responsibility for what happens next is subtly relocated onto her presence in the house, away from his own decision to act alone. This moment maps directly onto one of the most cited crime scene failures in the entire case. Forensic doctrine going back to Edmund Locard's exchange principle, that every contact between 2 objects transfers material both ways, is precisely why homicide protocol treats a body as evidence not to be touched until it has been photographed and documented in place. By carrying John Benet upstairs and removing the tape himself, John transferred fiber and biological material between himself, the blanket, and the body, and eliminated any chance of documenting her exact original position, the placement of the tape, or trace evidence at the scene where she was actually found. What's notable is that this outcome has since been acknowledged from inside the investigation itself, not only by outside critics. Retired Boulder detective Bob Whitson, speaking in Netflix's 2024 documentary on the case, said plainly, "I should have removed all those people from the scene. That was a crime scene mistake." The contamination itself isn't in dispute even among the investigators who let it happen. What's notable here is only the shape of John's answer in this interview. Not, "I shouldn't have moved her," but a return to, "Why didn't the officers stop me?"
Why would someone send a ransom note, kidnap someone, and then kill them and leave them in the same house?
Well,
if the purpose is to get money.
Larry, this person is a madman. It's a monster. They don't think logically.
Pedophile?
Larry King asks the question sitting at the center of the entire ransom-kidnapping theory. Why would anyone kidnap a child for a specific ransom figure, then kill her and leave the body in the same house instead of ever collecting the money? John's answer is that the killer doesn't think logically. A madman. This is Code C3, statistically improbable scenario, when a described situation converges on too many rare, mutually contradicting factors at once to plausibly occur by chance. This exact question was later tested formally, not just rhetorically. According to Steve Thomas's own published account of the investigation, the FBI's Crimes Against Children unit reviewed the case file and concluded the ransom demand itself was criminally unsophisticated. The $118,000 figure closely matched John's actual annual bonus that year. The note was written on paper and with a pen already inside the house. And, most tellingly, no kidnapper ever called back, despite the note's own instruction to wait for a call. Reviewing more than 1,700 child murder cases the unit had studied going back to the 1960s, investigators found exactly one other case combining a female victim under 12, killed inside her own home, with a ransom note present at all. and their bottom-line conclusion, per Thomas's book, was that there had never been a kidnapping attempt. A genuine kidnapping for ransom that ends with the victim's body left in the house and no follow-up call isn't just emotionally hard to explain. Statistically, among real ransom kidnappings, it's close to unheard of. Framing that gap as simply the actions of an illogical madman answers the emotional register of Larry King's question without addressing the specific procedural pattern the FBI's own reviewers flagged. A polygraph offered on live television, on conditions that ultimately ruled out every examiner Boulder would accept. A basement window John called the police liars over, and later, under oath, said he only vaguely recalled mentioning. A kidnapping for ransom story the FBI's own reviewers concluded had never actually been a kidnapping attempt at all. What do you think really happened in that house? Leave a comment below. Subscribe for more analysis in this case series.